morning, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Week Health Summit. The session is titled, I Have a Dream for Health of India. The conversation will focus on the ideas and priorities that can shape India's health system over the coming decade. I'm pleased to welcome Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Swaraj. She needs no introduction. Within a year of being elected to Lok Sabha from the prestigious New Delhi constituency, for the first time, she has already made her mark within and outside the parliament through her speeches and engagement with people. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you, Atul. You're very kind of you.
So let me begin with the central theme of this session. What is your dream for health of India?
That's a wonderful question. So my dream for India is actually twofold. The first is to have access and inclusivity in our health system for everybody. The horse, their caste, their creed, their economic and socio-economic background. To ensure that we're leveraging technology to ensure that the access to healthcare becomes very modern and very effective. But my second fold dream is, we all know that India has a large population of youth. Today, 60% of our population is below the age of 35. A harsh reality will be that in 30 years down the lane, this particular huge sort of resource of youth that we have will grow old. So I want my country to have a very, very robust geriatric care system. And also, I think in order to ensure that, we need to, on one hand, have very strong policy-driven decisions to enable us to have that kind of infrastructure on the ground, to equip us to deal with that. But on the other hand, we also need to run a very formidable awareness campaign where we sensitize people that health is not something to be taken lightly. Your mind, your body are building blocks for a Viksit Bharat, for a developed nation.
You raised a very pertinent point about India's demographic changing in the coming 30 years. Can you go a little bit more in that particular area? So what kind of initiatives are needed in that sector so that our aging population is better taken care of by the government initiative from the private sector also?
So I am very proud to say that the current dispensation, the Modi administration is already thinking about it in this direction. If you remember, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, in fact, Dr. Srinivas, who is the director, who met me here as well, that's one of the most leading, hello doctor, how are you? It's a very leading institute of the country. But I'm so proud to say that already now Delhi while Delhi is the pioneer institution, it's not the only one. Now we have 25 AIIMS, 20 are already operational, 5 are under construction. And this is going to ensure that there is an entire hub. Also, what I like is there are certain initiatives. In fact, Dr. Srinivas is also heading one of those initiatives, where he's ensuring integration and leveraging technology through an app, where he's integrating various Delhi hospitals to ensure that if there is bed availability, etc., you don't have to go running from pillar to post. You can actually see it on one application. So this is how you're leveraging tech-based platforms to see. All you need to do is your caregiver just needs to see whether there are certain ICU beds. If they're not available in, let's say, in AIIMS Delhi, then is there anything available in LNJP? Is something available in RML? And they will be able to give you that kind of information in real time. Not only this, I think the Modi administration in the last 11 years has ensured that there is a threefold approach to everything. The first is financial health. So Ayushman Bharat, as we know, is one of the largest health insurance schemes in the world. 5 lakh rupee annual cover is given to the Labharti, especially the economically weaker sections. And then the Honorable Prime Minister went ahead and expanded the ambit of this particular scheme by involving every senior citizen who is above the age of 70. Dehors their social or economic background. And I think that was such a boost, not just to the senior citizens, but also to the youth of the country. Imagine if you are a first-time job holder and you know that both your parents, your mother and your father individually, if they are above the age of 70, then any critical surgery you will be given a 5 lakh rupee financial aid by the government. It's a mind-boggling thing. It definitely gives a lot of confidence to the youth of the nation as well. Similarly, if you see, I've already spoken about the number of aims being increased, but Arogya Mandir, it becomes the first bastion or the first bastion of primary health. Arogya Mandir, we have increased. You will not believe there's more than 3.6 crore people who are actually benefiting from them. These are not going to be just a one-stop shop where you're just going to get a simple band-aid. These are going to be very robust and formidable diagnostic centers. In fact, recently there was a 15-day campaign which was held by the Honorable Prime Minister, Sashakta Nari Swasth Parivar, where screenings for cancer, for screening for mammographies were also done in Arogya Mandir. There was detailed blood work done. TB screenings were also done. So we are actually making sure that we are concentrating more on prevention even before cure. The second approach is the fact that there is a major push by the government, not only in building the infrastructure, but also, as I said, awareness is a huge thing. Before Pradhan Mantri Modi, having an international day of yoga was unheard of. And today you know that yoga is not only a sign of our soft diplomacy of the world, it is also ensuring that you are not neglecting your mental health. The way he has been an ambassador of yoga himself. Also, the third thing I would say is that he's also leveraging our ancient medicine, like having a separate ministry for the Ministry of Ayush, where we are taking our ancient medicines like Ayurveda, amalgamating it with current medicine, as well as maybe not only just allopathy, but also ensuring that there are technological advancements which are being used. And finally, the push for indigenous medicine, right? I think the Jan Aushadhi Kendra is a huge step in this. Number one, I would like to give two examples. The first is, during COVID, if you remember, India was the only country that had not one, but two indigenous India-made vaccines. And not only in India ensured that she behaved like Hanumanji and those vaccines work like Sanjeevani Booty. We actually exported those vaccines to about 43 countries free of cost. After Operation Sindoor, I had the opportunity of actually visiting 3 countries of West Africa. Each and every nation there was extremely grateful to India for lending a hand in dealing with the pandemic. Coming back to Jan Aushadhi Kendra, when we are talking about equitable access to medicine, in a Jan Aushadhi Kendra, you are not bound only by things which are patent driven. Generic drugs are actually ensured that they are given to the patients at 80% cheaper. You should actually go and see things like a glucometer. You will get it for $250 at a Jan Aushadhi Kendra. And I'm very proud to say that the Jan Aushadhi Kendra, if you go to Delhi as well, they are not only limited to government hospitals. Places like Paharganj, places like Karol Bagh, places like Devnagar, Anand Parvat. Anand Parvat is a slightly impoverished area in my constituency. We have ensured that there is a very vast network of Jan Aushadhi Kendra as well. So I think this kind of a holistic approach of ensuring indigenous medicine, of ensuring access to cheaper medicine, ensuring that there is very robust investment in infrastructure, as well as giving financial aid and giving the stage to alternative medicine as well, is a holistic approach which is going to ensure that India is going to be a leader on the global map when it comes to health sector.
Taking you from the policy to the slightly personal connection, you also know that your mother, the late Sushma Swaraj, served as the health minister during Vajpayee regime. So did her experience or approach also shapes your understanding of not just the public life, also the health sector?
Oh, certainly. Because I can tell you that out of all the ministries that she was a part of, I think the health ministry is the one that gave her the maximum amount of job satisfaction. And I remember she was definitely one of the driving forces of ensuring that instead of having just one AIMS, we should actually expand the number of AIMS. And she was the one who did the Shilanyas of about 6 AIMS in India. Not only that, she's the one who actually knew that in order to have a Samriddh Bharat, you need to have a Swasth Bharat. Her personality was actually defined by her compassion. If I must say that even today, people remember her compassion and her accessibility to people. That is something that definitely has informed my choices in life. And when it comes to the health sector, the fact that she worked arduously day and night to ensure that there was a lot of work done for women's health, especially for menstrual hygiene. I remember when I got elected, one of the first in CSR initiatives that we took out in my constituency was to actually establish a period pad manufacturing and distribution unit in one of the largest Seva Bastis in my constituency.
You mentioned women's health. Now, as we look at the public life, saw yesterday also, women are shaping political outcomes also in Bihar. So what about the women's health? Are there sufficient initiatives available from the government side? There must be certain challenges also. What's your experience? What needs to be done in this particular sector?
Atalji, thank you for that question, because I think women's health is one of the most important aspects of nation building. Because women are the fulcrum on which the entire family unit is hinged. And women, especially mothers, my God, it is most difficult. It's an arduous task to take them to the doctor, right? We all understand that. A mother will say, if she has a headache, she'll say, don't worry, I'll sleep it off. She's the one, if she injures herself, she said, don't worry, beta, I will just have a glass of hot turmeric latte and I will be fine. On the other hand, if you even sneeze in front of her, she's going to rush with the latest kadha recipe in her arsenal and will ensure that you're very well looked after. But women's health is extremely important, and the latest initiative which was taken by the Honorable Prime Minister, the 15-day campaign which was run all across the nation, which was called the Sashakta Nari, Swasth Nari Sashakta Parivar. I think that was a trailblazing approach, because it ensured that women across any strata could go to their nearest Arogya Mandir, their nearest government hospitals or their CHCs, and they could actually be screened free of cost. So there was no diagnostic cost, and especially for the economically weaker sections, even the medicines, the drugs were also given free of cost. And that's very, very important. The moment you concentrate on a woman's health, automatically a culture of healthy lifestyle will permeate in the entire family. She will look after them. A strong family becomes the foundation for a healthy society. And a healthy society is obviously going to lead to a very productive nation. And I think the government is definitely doing quite a fair amount towards it. If you know, of course, in India, we have a indigenously developed cervical cancer vaccine. Even when it comes to Ayushman Bharat, as you know, in Ayushman Bharat scheme, and especially after this initiative of Swasth Nari Sashakta Parivar, has ensured that women come at the front fold of everything. And somewhere, I feel that somewhere in the responsibility befalls on all of us. See, health is a movement that can't only be shouldered or burdened by the government. The awareness needs to be inculcated in each one of us. We, as I said earlier, we need to realize that our minds and our bodies are the building blocks for a Viksit nation.
When we talk about health, obviously examples of new aims being built from 7 to 23 now. But when we move away from metros, you may have big hospitals in the private and government sector, we move from 50 to 100 kilometers away from metros, the access to health is not as good. Those are a big challenge before the government. How that can be addressed in the coming time?
I'm actually just looking for that hot sheet for you. I actually brought some really interesting data for you as well. Initiatives like the Pradhan Mantri Dialysis Program. Atulji, you will be really, it's so encouraging to see. There are 1,674 centers in the country. Over 11,757 machines have been employed. 342.25 lakh dialysis center sessions have already been conducted, which means that patients have actually saved over 16,000 crores. This seems like a very simple initiative, but I tell you, renal failure is something which is very rampant in the country. Dialysis is the need of the hour because obviously it takes years for people on the transplant list to get a viable donor. Not majority of them are able to even be matched. And I'll tell you, my mother herself suffered from renal failure, so I can say this from personal experience. It's a disease which not causes discomfort only to the patient. The entire family suffers with the patient. So initiatives like this. Also, when we talk about cancer care. By the way, I was very proud to meet those two doctors who have come from Cleveland who were talking about developing a vaccine for breast cancer. There have been initiatives where 19 institutes have already been approved at the state level, which are going to be cancer institutes. Similarly, when we talk about tertiary cancer care, 20 projects have already been approved to the amounting to the tune of 120 crores. This has really ensured that we are building the kind of infrastructure that is required. But another thing that the Modi government is doing is leveraging technology. When we talk about telemedicine is a revolutionary step. In far off places like Leh and Ladakh, where sometimes the weather also becomes a hindrance for the doctors and the medical care workers to actually reach. It started in COVID, but it's continuing now. That telemedicine is ensuring that maximum amount of healthcare access is being given to rural India. Similarly, we have seen how technology can be leveraged for ensuring that we make up for this lack of infrastructure presently. For example, the CoWIN app ensured that the whole country was not only given 2 shots but a booster shot as well. While the rest of the world, especially very developed countries like USA, was still giving paper certificates, India was perhaps the only nation that had an indigenously developed app where you could just see in the palm of your phone. You could actually just see in the palm of your hand, pick up your phone and say, all right, this is the date. This is when I need to have my next vaccine. And also, when we talk about a digital health stack in terms of ensuring all the records are put in one place, India is definitely breaking the glass ceiling there.
Face today is not just limited to aging. You also briefly mentioned about mental health. In your interactions with the population, how the challenge can be met from the government side, from the private side, from the family side. How do you look at the crisis which you may face in the coming time related to mental health?
So mental health, especially in this day and age when there is an onslaught of not only media, there's also proliferation of social media, I think becomes a huge challenge, especially because our youth today is not just dealing with real life challenges of, let's say, family pressures or job pressures or education. We're also dealing up with made up crises which comes from chasing likes. And that's a very, very important conversation to have. So I think one of the things that we need to do is have that conversation with the youth of the country very, very early on and equip them with the tools which are necessary to deal with stress. I think, as I said, communication is definitely one of the most important things to combat stress. The fact that practices like yoga and Pilates is something that, and mindfulness is something that needs to be seen not just alternative medicine and alternative therapies. They actually need to be integrated and needs to be made lifestyle choices. And for that, I'm very grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister because he's actually leading from the front. When you have that integrated yoga program on International Day of Yoga, you're not only arranging for awareness across the country and the globe, you're also ensuring an active participation of the youth in it. We were talking about geriatric medicine. We were talking about how India is, in 30 years down the line, is going to have a huge old age population. What I see is one of the most chronic diseases in the older persons is that of loneliness. And for that, we need to ensure that we build very robust, vibrant communities. We need to make sure that there was a study which said that the easiest shortcut to be happy in life is to have a purpose. A purposeful life is a happy life. And for that, we need to ensure that we have more community engagement. We need to ensure that there is more purposeful engagement. And 65 is no longer the age for retirement anymore. One needs to ensure that we actually ensure these things are so preventive that even when the youth of today becomes senior citizens, they still continue to be contributors towards the nation, not only in terms of economical, but also ensuring that they are backbones of the growth of India.
You mentioned this also in the last 10 years, particularly so after the COVID, the emphasis, the focus, the conversation around using alternative medicine, yoga, Ayurveda has increased. But it also sometimes leads to some kind of debate whether one should prefer this over the other, or do you think this can be integrated? What's your take on this?
I don't think it has to be either or. I think you can have a very holistic approach to your health, and it's a choice that you can make where you can very easily integrate both. There have, for example, I'll just give an example of pranayama, right? There has been research which actually shows that Bhramri, even one Bhramri pranayama, actually lights up the neurons in your brain. So again, it doesn't have to be either or. They can actually be complementary. We all know that Panchakarma immediately helps you de-stress. So if you're talking about detoxing your body, it doesn't always have to be by taking supplements. It can also be by using Panchakarma. A lot of people these days are taking magnesium supplements to help them sleep better. Well, Brahmi and Ashwagandha and adaptogens, simply something as simple as having tulsi in your chai, that's an adaptogen. That really helps you calm your nerves down. And I think there doesn't need to be a choice. It can be a holistic approach. You can actually choose both.
Part of your lifestyle also, daily
Oh,
routine
certainly.
also.
Oh, certainly. And I think it's something that sort of fuels you and makes you grow. And one more thing, Atulji, that I would really appreciate is something that millennials and Gen Z are doing. They're actually using technological gadgets to sort of help them guide. It can be something as simple as having a continuous glucose monitor, or it can be something like a smartwatch, or the latest, having those smart rings. Anything that can help you sort of stay in the lane, anything that can help you motivate. If it is technology driven, whether it is alternative medicine or it is allopathy, you can choose to have every tool in your tool bag to assist you and guide you through your journey.
Before we close, as we move towards the end of our allotted time, I have one last question. If there was one thing in the health sector which you think should be changed, or you would like to change, or should be changed in the coming few years, would that be?
More than change, something that I'm very excited to see, and I would want to give it an impetus, is using artificial intelligence in the health sector. I think it is going to help expedite the entire diagnostic process. It can sort of it can take away the aspect of any human error. I had recently a friend of mine was diagnosed with cancer, and it was a GIST. And unfortunately, we were told that they did the test and they said that there's medicine available for 16 mutations, but her mutation did not cover under that. Of course, the entire family was distraught, and then turns out it was a human error done by the lab. These kind of errors can be heartbreaking. Luckily, we caught it in time, and we found out that we did the tests again, and we found out that there is some kind of medicine to help her out, and it fell within those 16 mutations. But like I said, I think artificial intelligence can expedite the entire diagnostic process. And second, it can take away the human error. It can perhaps even take away the biases if they exist in the diagnostic process.